Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassell. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. And good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. I am your host, Willie Hassell, your gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And she is the always lovely, the mystical, the mysterious, Lynn Nickerson.
Hey, good evening, Willie.
Hey, good evening yourself.
How the heck are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, so did you have a great day?
I did.
Good.
I thought, yeah, I guess I did.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
It still feels like weeks since we've been here last, doesn't it?
Oh, it was only a week.
I know, but it feels longer than that.
Well, yeah, I know it.
Yeah.
I know it. When we're not here, it's like, we should be there or something. I don't know. But anyway, you know what? I'm going to stop babbling, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce tonight's guest.
Wonderful.
And it is our pleasure to welcome back to the show Sherri Brake. And Sherri owns Haunted Heartland Tours based out of West Virginia. And she has been investigating the paranormal for over 25 years. I guess actually it's 30 now, I think. And she leads tours of haunted places in several states as well as in the UK. Sherri is also an author of many books on the paranormal and some of the country's most famous haunted sites. Tonight on Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, we are talking about my favorite subject, ghosts and hauntings. And so let us welcome to the show once again, Sherri Brake. Good evening, Sherri.
Hello, Sherri.
Hello. How's everybody up there?
We're doing great.
We're doing good. How are you doing out there in West Virginia?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's been a busy week here. I've been working on upcoming tours. I've got a couple tours coming up in Ohio next weekend, and already starting to book some locations for 2016.
Wow, that's great. So what have you got coming up for tours?
I'm sorry. I think our connection's a little staticky. I couldn't hear you, Lynn.
What do you have coming up for tours? Is that better? Can you hear me better? Sherri?
Hello?
Oh, no.
No. This doesn't sound good.
I can just barely hear you.
Can you hear Willie better than me?
No, Lynn, I think I can hear you better than Willie.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay. You're on.
Okay. Well, I'll just raise my voice. Is that any better?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming in clear.
We can hear you fine.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, I just wanted to thank you guys again for having me. I know this is the second time that I've been on your show, and I'm looking
pleasure.
forward to it.
So are we, if you can hear us.
Can.
Can you?
And as Willie had mentioned, I spent a lot of time in these haunted buildings, and I know the last time that I was on the show that we had talked a little bit about the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville, West Virginia, and we also spoke a little bit about my latest book that came out last year, which was the haunted history of the Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, which is also in West Virginia.
Right, and you know, when I was out there to Moundsville, I didn't realize Allegheny was as close as it was. I would have gone.
Yeah, well, they're both right off of main interstates, which is saying a lot in West Virginia.
You don't have too many of them, do you?
We don't have enough.
Have you set up a tour for the Trans-Allegheny? Asylum?
Oh, yes. I have one coming up August the 22nd this year, and it's sold out back in March.
No kidding.
So, and you know what? That's one thing I try to do is I try to keep the amount of people that I have on these investigations to smaller numbers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those big buildings will have 50, 60, 70, 80 people. Even buildings like the Ohio State Reformatory, they'll push over 100 people on their public ghost hunts. So I kind of like to keep it down around 40. It's a better investigation for investigators.
Do you usually?
You're not tripping over top of everybody.
Yeah.
You get a lot better quality time to go off on your own, and you get a lot of downtime. So you don't have people, traipsing in while you're trying to set up for an EVP session.
Yep.
So
You get some
typically a good number.
private, quiet times. You can record something or hear something.
Right. And even though like with the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, it's the second largest stone-cut building in the world.
Mm.
So you have miles and miles of hallways in the main hospital, but I still keep it at 40 people. And let me tell you what, that place is absolutely amazing.
Is it jumping with ghosts, Sherri?
I tell you, there's so much haunted history in that building alone. I mean, everybody's like, what's the most haunted place that you've ever been? Well, it constantly changes.
I bet it does.
All of them. Yeah.
I bet there are different hut areas, different times that you go.
Yes. And, some nights you're going to have a lot more activity than on other nights.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have quiet nights as well. But the asylum, my goodness, what a beautiful building it is. The architecture style is beautiful, and the fact that it was a Thomas Kirkbride building is pretty cool. And Kirkbride was a psychiatrist, and he went across the country with these plans on how to build these beautiful facilities that were used as asylums. And the buildings all tend to have the same style footprint. They have a very large main center hospital with wings off to the side.
Yeah, like
and they're very, very grand looking. And I'm sure there's some of those up in the Northeast. I know there's one in Philadelphia, but I'm sure up in the area where you guys are from, there's bound to be a couple.
Danvers.
Yeah, the Batwing design, right? You're probably familiar with Danvers State in Massachusetts was one of those.
I have not been there, but I am just a little bit familiar with it.
Well, it's condominiums now, but...
Wasn't it built, though, originally for 250 beds, and they wound up putting in about 1,000 people?
Right. When they built it, of course, it took many years to get built. And this was during the time of the Civil War. They did open it in 1864, Trans-Allegheny there, for the first patient, and they had built it originally to house about 250 people. But by the 1950s, they had over 2,400 in that facility.
2,400.
So there was a lot of overcrowding. And these people that were trained to take care of these patients, they did the best that they could. But I mean, just in any profession, you're going to have good ones and you're going to have bad ones.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there were patients that were mistreated. Some of the techniques and procedures that were used in the early days of the asylum, we would look at as being very barbaric.
Yeah, lobotomies.
The straitjackets, the isolation. In the early days of the asylum, they actually practiced bloodletting, where they would actually cut and bleed you to get rid of the evil spirits.
I know, and they did things like having patients strapped to the beds and
ice baths,
handcuffed to the walls, and
right. And
ice.
Of course, there was shock treatments that took place. You had the ice pick lobotomies that would occur, and any place that has this type of negative energy
and trauma
surely is a breeding ground for paranormal activity. Don't you agree, Lynn?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's no getting away from it. Sherri, when you do have a tour like that, do the groups have full reign of the facility, or are they relegated to just a few rooms in particular?
Well, what takes place on a public ghost hunt at Trans-Allegheny is they typically will divide the group up, and they will have you stay on each floor for about an hour at a time, and then they will change you around. And I have never liked that type of arrangement. Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky will do that as well, and I don't want any part of that. I know that's how they run, and it seems to be successful for them, but for me as an investigator, I really don't want to be told that I have to stay on the third floor for an hour if I don't want to be on the third floor for an hour.
Yeah.
You know, so we have full range.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Wherever we go, whatever places that we can get into that is open to the public, and sometimes they'll actually open up other areas for us that they typically do not open up for the public, which is always a nice treat. But I like to wander at will. If if the Civil War section is active that night, I might want to spend 6 hours in the Civil War section. So it's nice to be able to have
free reign.
That type of a setup that you can come and go as you desire. So that's pretty cool.
Do you typically partner up? Does anyone ever go anywhere alone?
We try to stress that it's always best to use the buddy system.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because you are in a dark, unfamiliar building with a lot of steps. Sometimes there might be pieces of plaster that fall down and hit you. There could be puddles of water on the floor from a ceiling that leaks. So it's always a good practice to at least have one other person with you that can help you if something does happen. And I am terrible about following my own little rules because typically when I've got these buildings, I want to make sure everybody is doing okay. So I'm constantly out there walking around. Sometimes we have some volunteers who help out, and we just want to make sure everybody's being safe and having a good night. It's never any fun to lose anybody in a big building.
Oh, that would be scary.
On occasion, it does happen.
Oh, my gosh. You do get turned around, I would imagine, especially it being dark.
Yeah, and you can hand out maps, which are great, but when you get in a building that's 300,000 or 400,000 square feet,
and then your battery dies.
Yes, right.
That would be awful.
Right. So always carry extra batteries.
Yeah. Sherri, can you get into some of the tales of the hauntings that people have experienced there?
Lynn, I can barely hear you. I'm sorry.
Can you get into the tales of some of the hauntings that people have experienced?
Am I afraid?
No.
Can you hear me any better, Sherri?
Oh, boy.
No, this is not working too well.
Sherri?
Yes.
Okay,
Hello?
I'm going to try this again. Tales. Can you tell us some of the tales?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, great.
We've had a lot of flooding here in West Virginia, a lot of these storms in this past week, and I'm not sure maybe if that's what's
affecting the
phone lines now or not. I know there's some power outages and things like that. So right now it's pretty clear. And Lynn, I think you asked if I have any tales.
Tales, T-A-L-E-S, yeah.
Yes,
of hauntings.
Of which building were you interested in?
Oh, whatever you want to start with. Well, I was thinking Trans-Allegheny to begin with. It's got several buildings?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
It does. But, typically when you do a regular ghost hunt, they almost always have you in the main building, which is the main hospital building.
Okay.
You can venture there. You can go upstairs. They do have the seclusion cells. And the seclusion cells were where they would basically keep you for 24 hours a day.
Ooh.
Now, with a Thomas Kirkbride hospital plan, they would keep the quietest of the patients the closest to the lobby area. And that makes great sense because when you come in and you would go to visit, you don't want people to hear the screaming and the shouting of the patients that would be more violent. So you would keep them farther away. So the seclusion cells are pretty far away from the main lobby. Now, this is an area where you would be put in 24 hours a day. I've heard stories that, you would be stripped of all clothing because clothing could be used as a weapon, and clothing could also be something that you could hurt yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
You could hang yourself with your pants. Even your dress could be used to hang yourself. Even the inside of the door handle would be removed, and it would be flat, because these patients, I mean, you're going to look for anything that you can to hang yourself off of. We had an investigation there probably about 2 years ago, and the reason I'm telling you about the seclusion cells is myself and several other people entered into the seclusion cells, and we closed the door, and you're sitting there, and you can actually still see the mechanism on the wall where they would chain you to.
Oh.
And we sat down, and we turned on our recorders, and we started to have an EVP session. And, you know, we're asking all the typical questions, you know, is there someone here? Would you like to tell us your name? You know, were you a patient here? Do you have a message? And we're going on and on and on. And we went to play the recorder back, and we hear a man's voice. And I believe it was after we had asked, is there anyone here? And you hear this man say, my throat. And we thought, well, that's interesting. You know, why would someone say my throat? So we go downstairs, and we're talking to one of the volunteers that was there that night, and it turned out that in the seclusion cell where we had been in, that somebody had actually wrapped a chain around their neck and had killed themselves, had strangled themselves in the room. So that was pretty impressive.
Sad tale.
There's a few places in the building where I'm extremely uncomfortable.
Really?
And one of those is it's down in the basement, and it's typically not open to the public. It is the recovery area for the lobotomy patients. And when they did a lobotomy, they had a very quick method that was non-surgical of a way that they could perform a lobotomy. And this was revolutionized back in the 1940s and 1950s by Dr. Walter Freeman. And they would actually lay you on your back. There was no anesthetic that was used. Sometimes they would shock you once or twice just to disorient you. And they would take an ice pick device. And, of course, it was like a surgical device, but it looked pretty much like an ice pick. And they would go into the tear duct, and they would take a surgical hammer, and they would tap just a few times, and it would go up into the frontal lobe of the brain. And it would destroy the tissue there, and it would alter your personality forever. If you were aggressive, this would make you non-aggressive. This would completely change your personality. So they would not have to drug you anymore because you were basically a vegetable.
Oh.
So this is an area where they would take you down to recover from that procedure. And what a dark area it is. And I'm not talking lighting-wise, because, of course, it's dark lighting-wise. But
Dark energy.
you just feel a thickness, a heaviness. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming at times. And that's my favorite place to go investigate, is down in that lobotomy recovery area.
How could they do that without anesthetic? How could they put those people through
Well,
that?
it was, of course, you're dealing with a doctor here. Now, this Dr. Walter Freeman, he's very
He must have been a sadist.
He did over 250 of these lobotomies in West Virginia in 1 week.
I hope he's proud of himself.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there were other doctors that were called in from local hospitals to observe his procedure. And a few of them came away, I mean, like ready to throw up. They called him barbaric. They said a chainsaw could do a better job.
Oh.
It was frightening. And this guy would travel across the country. And he would go to the penal institutions, the prisons, the jails, the psychiatric hospitals, and he would do this procedure, and it would take less than 10 minutes. So, again, when you look back on the history of why, a reasoning of why these places would have all this activity, look at the suffering that took place there, and these treatments that these poor patients had to endure. And then, after all this, if your family never claimed you after you passed away, you're put into a cemetery, and those cemeteries do not have markers. So you have these unmarked graves, and thousands of people lie in these graves.
That's the ultimate insult, isn't it?
It is. Now, originally they were marked, and then I believe it was in the 1970s or the 1980s when the caretaker decided that if he would take down the markers, it would be easier to mow.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right. Right. So now you have all of these unmarked graves. And, I'm like you guys. I'm a big believer in marking somebody's last resting spot. You should have something there to acknowledge that person and what they've done in their life, or that they actually existed. A name, a number, something. And now they have nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Forgotten.
Like the Danvers State that I just mentioned a few minutes ago, the cemetery they have there, they do have markers. They're just like flat stones, but they have no idea how many bodies are actually buried in there, because there could be 4 or 5 in each hole. I mean, it was, some of the unclaimed bodies. Yeah. They would just say, well, while you got that open, put this one in there too.
Yeah, it's just putting a Band-Aid on the situation.
And we call it double-decker style. That double-decker style is cheaper. It's cost-effective. You have people that aren't able to pay for their burial areas, so you're going to stack graves. Yeah. And you're going to stack bodies. And, it's a shame. But, of course, this goes on in other countries as well. You look at some of the crypts and the tombs and things like that, where they inter bodies, and then 5 or 10 years later they're pulling out the bones and sticking somebody else in, and putting the heads in one spot and the femur bones in another spot, and everybody's just all mixed up and jumbled.
It's just,
But here, you don't expect something like that. You think one body, one grave. That's the way it should be. But unfortunately, it's not.
No.
And if you look at we're talking about cemeteries, if you look at the West Virginia Penitentiary, their cemetery is the size of a football field, and they don't even have headstones. They have a license plate at the top of their head with their name on it.
Well, that's
they made
something
license
anyway.
plates at the West Virginia Penitentiary, so of course, what are you going to get for a headstone? You're going to get a stake in the ground and a piece of metal, the size of a license plate with your name on it, and that's about it.
Well, getting back to that recovery room, Sherri, what have you picked up? What have you detected while in there?
Well, I'll tell you what, the heaviness is almost a constant down there. You can feel it, and it's just not me, but it's other people that I take down the staircase to this area, because it's pretty hard to find. And I watch their faces. We're going down the steps, we got flashlights, we're headed downstairs, and I'll turn and I'll ask everybody, how are you feeling? And the majority of the time, people will be like, it's like I can't take a deep breath. It's the human body can pick up on that negative energy.
Yeah.
And you can feel it, and that's what people experience when they're going there. I've seen shadows move that I cannot explain, and I'm not talking about when I'm walking around with a flashlight. If you're doing that and you're bebopping around and you're shining the flashlight here or there, you're constantly going to be seeing shadows just because of the way the light's picked up and dispersed throughout the room or up and down the hallways. I'm talking about sitting down in the dark, maybe training one flashlight down the hallway and just sitting. And then you see the shadows. And that's a common thing that is seen at Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
How about
are the shadow people. And on all floors. It's just not, regulated to, the first floor or the basement or anything like that. People have experiences everywhere in the building. I've been in that basement when the temperature has dropped at least 15 degrees. 15? 15.
Yeah, that's a big drop.
And, of course, I know it's 15 because we have non-contact thermometers with us. I'm not going to say we have one with us all the time, but on times when we're down there and we're setting up for a long investigation, we do. It's a handy piece of equipment
Mm.
to have, and to be able to document a temperature drop like that is pretty spectacular. And it might not last for long. It could be that it lasts for 15 or 20 seconds, just enough to get a reading. But once again, it all goes back to energy.
Mm-hmm.
We are energy beings. When we pass on, we have an energy field that is still with the body, with the soul, and I believe it can cause temperature variations, just like it can drain your equipment and make equipment quit working.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about that transference of energy. So I've seen everything in that basement. I've seen I don't want to say I've seen everything. I've seen the shadows.
How about
I've had the cold
EVPs?
spots happen. I actually heard my voice whispered, my name was
Oh,
down there
really?
one night, which is pretty unsettling. And that shows intelligence.
Oh, it does.
When
Interactive
something
intelligence.
says your name like that, and you're by yourself.
Yeah.
You can
High
pretty
creep
much rule out
factor.
anybody else being in the area when you know that you're the only person down there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had my name said twice
Oh.
like that, and not in that building, once in another building. But it can be quite startling when something like that happens.
Well, I suppose you go there enough times, they get to know you.
Yeah, they get to know
I
you.
guess so.
Get to know
I
you by
guess
name.
so. And maybe they're curious as to what we're doing there as well.
Invading their space, interlopers,
So
Sherri, it is now the bottom of the hour, and we're going to have to take a break. So we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes, and we're going to be speaking with Sherri Brake again about the West Virginia Penitentiary.
And I was just going to say, how is the phone connection now? Should we try and call you back during the break?
fine.
It's fine now?
Okay.
Okay, we'll just leave it at that then.
Okay,
All right,
so we'll
great.
be talking about the West Virginia State Penitentiary and the Allegheny Asylum. So don't go away. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Supernatural Magazine, the UK's newest paranormal magazine, provides support to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. It is the magazine's goal to bring every aspect of supernatural news and research from around the world under one roof to create a universal platform for all those interested in the supernatural. More information is available at supernaturalmagazine.com. You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM, and we'll be right back after this short break.
Some folks like to get away, they take a holiday from the neighborhood and hop a flight to Miami Beach or to Hollywood. Me, I'm taking a Greyhound on the Hudson River line. Oh, I'm in a New York state of mind. Seeing all the movie stars in the fancy cars and their limousines. I've been high in the Rockies, under the evergreens, but I know what I'm needing, and I don't want to waste more time. Oh, I'm in a New York state of mind. It was so easy living day by day. Oh yeah, out of touch with the rhythm and blues. Well, now I need a little down to reality, and it's fine with me 'cause I let it slide. Don't care if it's Chinatown or down on Riverside. I don't have any reasons, I left them all behind. I'm in a New York state of mind. It was so easy living day by day, out of touch with the rhythm and blues.
And you are tuned to WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth's West End, where programming is made possible by you, our members, and by One Sky Services, serving people with developmental disabilities, acquired brain disorders, and others in need of support since 1983. And they are online at oneskyservices.org. And from the community calendar, do you know about Pro Portsmouth? They are the good folks and the 501c3 nonprofit who bring you some of Portsmouth's most popular events like Market Square Day, Children's Day, First Night, Summer in the Streets, road races, and more. They always have something they are working on and are always seeking volunteers and supporters to help. To find out more about their events as well as volunteer and support opportunities, information is available online at proportsmouth.org. And some upcoming guests.
Our upcoming guest list starts with July 25th when we welcome Richard Southall, who has done extensive research on the Civil War era of the Confederate States, and he'll be joining us to discuss his latest publication titled Haunted Plantations of the South. August 1st, Merle Frankhauser, surf musician extraordinaire, is going to be talking about his new release as well as his experience while living in Hawaii. And he had a lot of paranormal experiences while he was there. August 8th, we're welcoming Ellen Dugan. She's a witch and a psychic medium and author of over a dozen books. And she'll be talking about her new release called The Natural Psychic. August 15th, Bill Hall returns to give us the straight scoop on the Haunted House Diaries, which was written from investigative work at the Connecticut Triangle area of Litchfield Hills, Connecticut. August 22nd, Mary Joyce returns. She has a current events and news site titled skyshipsovercashers.com, and she'll be talking about her recent release titled Underground Military Bases. And August 29th, our local quintessential storyteller and historian, Roxy Zwicker, is returning for more ghostly tales of the Portsmouth Seacoast area. And that's our upcoming guest list.
All right, and now let's go back to the phone with tonight's guest. From West Virginia, the operator of Haunted Heartland Tours and author of many books on the paranormal, Sherri Brake. Good. Welcome back, Sherri.
Welcome back, Sherri.
Boy, that's an impressive list of upcoming guests that you have.
Oh, thank you. We've been working on it.
And we got more, too.
Well, I don't think anybody understands how much background work goes into what you guys do.
No, they don't.
It's not like you just magically, have a show and everything works well that night.
Phone calls, emails, letters, you name it. But thank you.
Right.
So we left off talking about the recovery room. Was there anything else you'd like to add to that you experienced there?
I would suggest that people visit that building for themselves. I mean, there's thousands of people that go through that building annually. They have daytime tours. They have historic tours. They have the overnight ghost hunts. They have a witch's ball around Halloween.
Oh, that's fun.
A lot of cool stuff. I even think
Yeah.
they had something like a transvestite ball
Oh,
there
my.
lately. So they're very creative
Yeah, that would be a kick. But as far as the...
with what they do. But for me to talk about it, it's one thing, and for folks to read a book about it, that's pretty cool. But to visit it and to pull up that driveway, I mean, it's
very
jaw-dropping.
impressive. But how about the recovery room specifically, the lobotomy recovery room? Was there anything else you wanted to add to that, like EVPs that anybody else has experienced? Any other voices?
Well, I've been down there on quite a few occasions with folks, and the majority of the time we come out of there with something happening, whether it's a personal experience or somebody capturing an EVP, or somebody seeing something or having our equipment go crazy. We use dowsing rods, we use pendulums, and then we use scientific equipment as well. Like tri-field meters, EMF meters, just digital voice recorders, anything that we can like that to help prove that there's an existence there that we can't quite put our finger on. So I'd have to say the majority of the time somebody has an experience.
Yeah,
And it seems like the older I get, the less equipment I carry now. It used
Really?
to be I carried everything and anything that I could fit into my... I wear a photographer's vest with a lot of pockets.
Well, you know
On
it
it.
works for you, you know?
And and now as I get older, I'm more about the experience and not fiddling around with batteries.
Well, the gadgets.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I
So-
think a good recorder, a camera, and a K2 meter is about all you need.
I do
Right.
too.
And personal experiences, although they don't prove anything to anybody else,
They carry a lot of weight.
they are personal experiences, and you
They
know
do.
it happened.
And most of the time, it's a personal experience that someone has happened to them that changes the way that they think.
That's
Yeah.
true.
So what if you get a spike, on your EMF meter? But for me to sit there and actually see a shadow move and not be able to explain it, or have my hair pulled, or a hand placed on my shoulder, or something like that, that changes your life, because you know that you might not be able to prove it to the scientific community, but you know that occurred, and it really can be life-changing, especially for a skeptic.
Yeah.
The other rewarding thing is being able to corroborate your experience with somebody else and then to line it up with history to find out there actually was somebody by that name or that event happened to them in that room. That's really
Right.
very rewarding to find that out.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yes, it is. There's a building that we investigate in Ohio called the Ohio State Reformatory, and there's an area there where people smell rose.
Oh,
They smell roses. They smell rose perfume.
wow.
And it's said that one of these spirits that linger on, that's her sign that she's in the room with you. Now, it doesn't happen to everybody, but it's happened for many, many years, enough to the point that there's a lot out there about it on the internet. It's been written about in books, documentaries, on the television shows and whatnot. And that's just the way that she announces that she's there in the room with you. It's the smell of that perfume.
Yeah, we just recently had a similar type of thing, speaking of smells, in an investigation that we did.
Yeah, we sure did.
And you want to explain that one, Lynn?
Well, we've been investigating an historic site called the James House, built in 1723. And we've been there about 6 times, but on one of the nights downstairs, I detected eucalyptus oil. And I just brushed it off because I couldn't account for it. And I thought, well, maybe it's a smell wafting in from outside. And sometimes, smells change with the distance. So then we went upstairs and we investigated in what was called the trunk room, because it's got a trunk in there and that's it. And all 3 of us sat on the floor, and there comes that eucalyptus oil smell again.
And this time I smelled it too.
Yeah, so
wow.
both of us smelled it at the same time. It lasted for a full minute because we sat there discussing what it was, what the source could be. Willie was sucking on a cough drop, and I thought, well, maybe that's it. So I asked him about it, and he said, no, it's a lemon honey drop. So I smelled it, and there was no eucalyptus oil. Come to find out, that same night we had the recorder going, and there was a recording, an EVP, of a woman coughing in the room opposite the trunk room. And when I heard that on playback, I thought, I just bet you someone has died in that house from consumption, and I felt that it was a woman. And that's exactly what happened. And eucalyptus oil was used at that time for decongestion.
Oh, my goodness.
Back in the 1850s.
Yeah. We did get it confirmed that several members of the family,
Had
including
died.
a couple of women, had died from consumption.
Wow.
Yeah,
well,
so
that,
that
you know,
was-
that's pretty impressive that you were
Yeah.
able to find that out.
Yeah, with a little
And that it
research.
happened to you. And a lot of people, you know, they blow off anything to do with the olfactory nerves and senses.
Yeah, I know, but
You know, with smells. But that's very important. And yes, they did use eucalyptus back in the day, you know, to help with breathing with anybody that was asthmatic or
They did.
consumption.
yeah, they
I
had gone.
know.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, with eucalyptus oil, I even know dating back to the Egyptians that they used eucalyptus oil to keep away evil spirits.
Oh, yeah, that too.
So, you know, that don't discount anything.
No,
It's-
you can't.
you know,
And it was
something that
plain
you
as
know.
day. You know, it wasn't something we imagined. How about the Civil War section at the Trans-Allegheny?
Oh, well, that's the oldest area of the hospital, and of course it was built the first, and it was called the Civil War section because it was used to house some of the patients that came there that suffered from post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Oh,
And I have to tell you a quick story about somebody that had an experience in the Civil War section. This happened about 2 years ago. I invited my brother-in-law and my sister to come along on one of our overnight investigations. It was booked solid for the night, but I wanted to squeeze them in. I wanted them to come along. I knew they'd only stay a couple of hours because this really isn't their bag, you know. I knew they would just come there and they would just walk around and that would be it. You know, they'd be gone in an hour. My brother-in-law is about 6'6",
wow.
and he is a Confederate reenactor.
Oh,
And he knew that there was a Civil War section, so of course that was the area that he just wanted to go kind of look around and check out. You know, there's really not much to see. It's just a couple of sections, just a big empty room. So as he was walking through there, he saw a soldier.
he saw a soldier?
He saw a soldier, and it completely freaked him out. Now, if you can imagine, 6'6", big guy, he's been in battles before, many battles out in the battlefield where he's fought against the Yankees. And here he is walking around in an old, dark, abandoned asylum, and he actually sees a soldier standing in the Civil War section. Completely floored him. I think he was excited about it, but then again, he didn't really want to give credit to the fact that he had an actual experience. So I mention him in the book because I know, you know, he's probably slightly embarrassed about something like that. But it tickles me when a skeptic has an experience like
Yeah,
that. And of
that's
course,
impressive.
a spirit that is a Civil War soldier is going to be attracted
Yeah.
to somebody else who reenacts it almost on a weekly basis throughout the summertime. My brother-in-law is out there, you know, reenacting and battling. So I believe that like energy attracts like
Right,
energy.
there's an affinity there.
It's pretty cool. That was pretty cool that happened. But
Absolutely.
it's a fascinating building, and I hope your listeners, you know, regardless of where they're at, they make a trip and they go check that place out because it is very fascinating and such an interesting museum that they have set up there for the history of psychiatry. You can see a lot of the instruments and the devices that they have. They actually have some cribs that were used to hold adults inside of. You would lay down, and it was a wooden crib with slats all the way around it, and it was a form of isolation.
Oh.
Yeah,
They have a lot of interesting things on display. They have artwork from some of the former patients that were there. They have
Yes.
some of the original headstones that were placed there. They did find those, and they have some of those on display. So it really is a very interesting, not only paranormally speaking, but for American history. It was just a great place to visit.
How about Lily, the story about Lily?
Yes. Lily is an intriguing figure. She is a small child who people seem to have experiences with, interactions with. She is she's on the first floor, and her mother was a patient there. And I want to say urban legend has it that her mother was raped and was pregnant and gave birth to Lily.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to get a lot of documentation with these patients. There's been records that have been lost.
Right.
There's privacy acts in place. Records get lost, they get burnt, they get misplaced and whatnot. And we're not able to exactly prove a lot of the story, but people have captured her voice. They've captured an image of a small child over in the corner. You can make out that she's got a white dress on. She is probably one of the most sought-after entities in the building. People bring her gifts. They bring children's books. They will sit down in the room, and you'll know it's Lily's room when you see it because it's typically piled with gifts and dolls and things like that.
Has she named herself?
And they'll sit in the room and they'll turn their recorder on and they will start to read a child's book and hopefully capture something.
How do they know that it's Lily, though? Because didn't she die?
They've had psychic mediums, multiple psychic mediums that have been in that have picked up on her, and the name Lily is the name that has stuck.
Well, the reason I ask is because she was an infant when she died.
Yeah, that's the part we were trying to figure out.
Yeah.
So she died a few days after being born.
And then now she's 3 years old when she's detected.
Is 3 years old.
Right.
So,
and again, it's difficult to separate the truth from the facts.
Yeah.
When I was writing the book, I dug through hundreds and hundreds of newspaper articles, and I would come up with people that had been murdered by other patients. I came up with people that committed suicide, and I was always able to find the names. This story dates back to the Civil War because it was allegedly a soldier that raped the woman.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about the 1860s. When things like this happened, sometimes it was a source of embarrassment for the family.
Sure.
So names were changed. Identities were kept quiet. It didn't really make it into the front page news, especially if it was a family that had money. It was easy to commit people, very easy back in those days.
Yeah.
Say, for instance, you have a woman who gets pregnant and it's out of wedlock. The family could have her committed. And she would live there. She would give birth to the child. The child would stay with the mother until they were about age 16. They would be given a test to see what their aptitude was, and they would be asked if they wanted to leave or not. So they were given the choice to either stay with their mother or to be, taken out into the real world. So, the reasons for committal were very sad. Women that suffer from menopause could be committed from their husband.
Ooh.
All he had to do was sign a piece of paper and
be
the wife
grouchy.
would be taken away.
That is pretty darn scary.
It is, and the first seven patients were all housewives in their 50s.
Oh my gosh.
So, how sad is that?
Wow.
But it really is a sad part of our history that it would not take very much to have you committed. There were people that had, lists of reasons of committal. Could be anything from fever to a dog bite to syphilis, jealousy, bad whiskey, masturbation, smallpox. The list is kind of funny.
Was it usually the male that's committed the female?
I would imagine. If you were a man and you didn't get along with your wife, and you could sign a piece of paper, and away would go your wife,
One
and
way
you
to
could
get out
also
of it.
have the children taken with her.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was abused.
And that's a free home card.
The easy road to freedom, right?
Jeez. Sherri, going into these negative places, do you do anything in particular to protect yourself?
I'm pretty firm with my beliefs. I know that what I see on television and what I see with Hollywood is not the norm when it comes to investigating these buildings. I don't believe there's a demon lurking around every corner. I don't think that, I've been told that energy can travel with you, that these entities
Get attachments.
Can go home with you. I've never had anything like that happen, but I will tell you that there have been many a night when I've been completely drained. By the time I get home, it might take me a day or two just to bounce back. And I think that's what, it's more of an energy
an energy drain
than anything.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, an energy drain, that doesn't mean it's anything that's attached
Negative,
to you.
no. It's
Negative,
just,
no, it's just...
They do take a lot out of you.
Right.
Sherri, before we close this off, I'd be interested in knowing about your, as well as our listeners, your Ireland and Scotland tours.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a tough job. It's such a tough job when you have to take people to Ireland and Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
I know, but somebody's got to do it.
If you want to take a break, we'll fill in for you.
That's the problem. I've got so many people that have offered to help me. I think I could probably fill a small plane up. I have 2 trips going to Ireland and Scotland in 2016. I have one in April and I have one in September, and they both sold out.
No.
The very first trip sold out in 5 minutes online.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh! How do you do that?
I could not believe it. And the second one, I think it took just a couple of days after that. But it's a 10-day, 9-night excursion. We fly out of Chicago. We land in Dublin, and it's morning when we land in Dublin. And our very first stop is the Guinness factory.
Oh wow!
yeah.
First thing in the morning.
That.
Stop and have a drink.
We get thirsty when you wake up,
Oh, yeah.
But it's a nice blend of history, of cemeteries, of the architecture, of the music, of the myths, the magic. It's everything from the wee folks and the fairies up to Loch Ness Monster. And one of the cool things that we do get to do is we charter a boat that takes us across Loch Ness.
Oh.
So
What's your cancellation
that is
policy?
Like a highlight.
Do you have any cancellations?
No, I have a waiting list.
Oh my gosh!
But I plan on doing it about every 2 years. So that gives people plenty of time to make payments. And the trip, I think it's priced really good. I think it's about
we can't mention any money.
Which really isn't bad for a 10-day, 9-night, and that includes your hotels and all the buses. And we're at Stirling Castle and we're at Edinburgh Castle, and we do some haunted walks at night. So it's a pretty full trip.
Why don't you add a few more tours for the year?
Well, you know what? We get our last tour of the year is in September, and I don't know if I want to be in Ireland or Scotland when the snow starts falling.
Okay, put a couple in the summertime.
You don't want to be up here in the winter when the snow starts falling either.
Oh my, no, and I've been up your way before when the snow starts
Well,
falling,
this past year you wouldn't want to be here. It was horrible.
Yeah, I know. But I hope to travel up that way, and when I do, I'm going to be sure to look you guys up.
We'd love to meet you. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, definitely, you do that.
Have you come on the show
unfortunately, for tonight, though, we're out of time again.
Oh my goodness, boy, that flew by rather quickly.
It does.
It always does. By. It always does. But we do have enough time. You want to give out, websites or where you can buy the books and that kind of stuff?
Oh, great. Yeah, folks, the easiest way to find out about the tours and events and library presentations and all kinds of stuff like that is to visit the website, and that is hauntedhistory.net. Hauntedhistory.net. And I travel, do events probably in five or six states. I think I'm up to, and of course the Ireland and Scotland stuff. But they can look it up on the web and at the Facebook page, and at Twitter it's at Sherri Brake. And thank you both, Lynn and Willie, for having me again. I appreciate it.
We'd love having you on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherri. Thank you for joining us again.
And good luck on those tours.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, we'll be talking to you soon.
All right, take care.
Thank you, Sherri.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good night. All right, and that is Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, and Craig Mosier with the Graveyard Shift is coming
right on. Boy, what a fun idea of just thinking about taking one of those tours, huh?
To Ireland?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Ireland, Scotland, whatever.
England, Wales.
Yep.
One of these days.
The first thought is thinking about it, and then the realization
comes. Well, then you can't just think about it. Then you actually got to do something about it. Then you got to get out the checkbook,
Well, thank you, everyone, for listening, and have a good evening.